All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. As we're ready to ring in the new year, it's also time to get ready for the latest edition of the College Football Playoff. A very interesting quartet of teams this year have made it to this tournament, as you can make a legitimate case that each team in this playoff has a real shot of winning it all. You can't really say that all the time, but this time around, I think that you can definitely say that. Now, I want to start off with the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, as you got the fourth ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, the champions of the Southeastern Conference, taking on the number one overall seed in this tournament in the Michigan Wolverines. And this is a very interesting meeting right here, because you have two teams that some people don't want to see here. Of course, there are some people who are not thrilled to see Alabama in the college football playoff. Some people are calling it SEC bias because the fact that they got in over Florida State. I have expressed my feelings over that for the last couple of weeks on how I feel that things went down, and I still feel that the committee got it right. On the flip side, for Michigan, obviously, clearly, with the sign stealing scandal around this program throughout this college football season, you've had some people that have felt that Michigan should have been disqualified from that. That's their opinion. But nonetheless, you have two deserving teams, in my opinion, who have made the playoff. And of course, one team is 60 football minutes away from playing for the championship. You got a contest here where the Wolverines come in slightly favored, a point and a half as of right now over Alabama. The over under is 44 in this game. About a 63-degree game time temperature. It has rained in Pasadena, but the field is covered. And typically, when you think of the Rose Bowl, you think of a fast track out there in Southern California for this contest. Now, Michigan, they played in the first ever Rose Bowl back in 1902, and they're playing in the last one before the expansion of the college football playoff. Of course, there was some hope by some people that this contest would have featured Michigan and Washington to have the traditional Big Ten Pac-12 matchup. Of course, the last time that you could have possibly seen it in this format due to so much changes in realignment. But nonetheless, obviously, that is not the case. You look at this game for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. They've gotten to the college football playoff in each of the last 2 years, but they've been unable to get past the semifinals. We saw them get run off of the field in Miami a couple of years ago in the Orange Bowl, courtesy of Georgia. And then, of course, last year in the Fiesta Bowl, where they were upset by TCU. You look for this Michigan team, and they are a very intriguing team. And I'm looking at this contest right here. I'm looking at the battle, and I think this is going to truly be a game that is won in the trenches. And I'm talking about this Michigan offensive line going up against this Alabama front seven. And when you think about Jim Harbaugh, of course, the son of a coach, played in the NFL as a quarterback, was a starting quarterback at Michigan under Bo Schembechler. And he's brought some of that same philosophy that Bo Schembechler had with his team to his current Michigan team. The Wolverines get off the bus looking to run the football. Or if Michigan is going to run the football, look no further than the heart and soul of their team. I'm talking about number two, Blake Corum. This is a guy, who might be shorter in stature. He's a very physical back, works out with his offensive line. And of course, they respect what he brings to the table. So I'm looking at this Michigan offensive line. They've got to have the get off against this Alabama front seven, a very versatile front seven. You got a lot of NFL talent on that Nick Saban defense, which you normally do. You think about it, Dallas Turner, Caleb Downs, Chris Braswell, Deontay Lawson. A lot of talent right there. A lot of versatile guys with what they can do on the football field. It's going to be very important for Michigan to win first down. Why? Because you want to set it up and keep your offense on schedule. You don't want to get behind the chains against this Alabama defense, giving them an opportunity to pin their ears back. But also, Nick Saban is a master when it comes to giving opposing offenses and opposing quarterbacks different looks. So I want to see what the Wolverines are going to have in store for that one right there. But when I talk about the battle in the trenches, it's also this Alabama offensive line going up against this Michigan front. This might be the best offensive line that this Michigan defense has had to deal with all season long, and this could be one of the it not could be it will be one of the better defenses that Michigan, pardon me, Alabama rather has had to deal with. You're talking about a Wolverines defense that is second in the nation, but you look at Jalen Milroe for Alabama and at quarterback, and just like I talked about being so important for Michigan's offense to keep on schedule, I think the same is important for Alabama because the Crimson Tide are going to look to run the ball. Okay, and they want to keep it in second and short and manageable, third manageable, to keep their offense on schedule. But as the season has progressed, I've seen a more confident Jalen Milroe in that pocket, more confident throwing the football. We saw that with that big fourth down play to win the Iron Bowl against Auburn. We saw it in the SEC championship game against Georgia. And these quarterbacks in this contest, you got J.J. McCarthy, of course, for Michigan, and Jalen Milroe for Alabama. Which quarterback is going to be able to do more with the football in his hands, throwing when it's needed? That is going to be a very important question here. You look at special teams, especially for Alabama, with the likes of Kool-Aid McKinstry, then in the secondary with Terry and Arnold. But then Michigan's secondary has specialized in making the big plays and forcing the turnovers as well. You look at Junior Colson at linebacker, but then Mike Sangstro and the rest of that party in the Michigan secondary. These guys are the real deal. Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond at wide receiver for Alabama going up against this Michigan secondary. Jermaine Burton's a guy that, sometimes you sleep on him, and before you blink, you know what? He's behind your defensive backs. He has very deceptive speed, and I think the Wolverines defensively will be ready for that. But then we're talking about the running backs. I talked about Blake Corum. You can't talk about the running game for Alabama without mentioning the names Jace McClellan and Roy Dale Williams. I think when I look at this contest, this is going to be a classic heavyweight fight. And I say that from the standpoint, I do believe the first half, especially the first quarter, maybe half of the second quarter, is going to be a feeling out process. And it's going to be interesting to see which team blinks first. But I think once both of these coaches get into a rhythm, once all of these play callers get into a rhythm, I think we're going to see more offense in the second half. And I think it's going to come down to which team is able to establish the line of scrimmage with their run game, which quarterback is going to be able to do more passing when his team calls on him to do that, and which defense can go out there and make the first big play, most importantly, the first turnover. I'll tell you like this: Alabama to me has been better, ever since that loss to Texas and early in the season. They've got better and better as the weeks have gone on. They got some confidence, I think, by beating Ole Miss at home, the LSU game, the Auburn game, and then of course knocking off Georgia. On the flip side for Michigan, you know what? They basically had the mantra, it's been us against the world all season long. Suspend our head coach. Fine, we're going to go out there like a band of brothers and take care of our business. And that's what they did on the back end of the regular season. You're talking about a team going to Happy Valley and winning, going to College Park and winning against Maryland, and then of course beating Ohio State at home in the big game before disposing very easily of Iowa in the Big Ten championship game to get to this point. But for me, at the end of the day, I look at it like this: some people are going to lean on the fact and say, "Hey, Harbaugh and Michigan have not been able to win the big game. And I mean the big game, the college football playoff semifinal. I'll look at it from another standpoint. Nick Saban is one of the best big game coaches ever in college football. And then on top of that, he's the type of guy when you give him additional time to prepare for a team, especially with his defense, you tend to see some special things. Like I said, I think this is going to be a feeling out process for the beginning of this contest. Both teams are going to have some opportunities to make some big plays, but I like the defenses in this one. Which defense is going to go out there and put their opposing offense or put their offense rather in the best possible scoring scenario? I like Alabama in this game, and I'm going to take the Crimson Tide by the score of 31-20. Now, moving on to the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, as you've got seeded Texas, the champions of the Big 12, taking on the second seed Washington Huskies out of the Pac-12. Now, I've talked about the Washington Huskies being disrespected this season. We saw them as a 10-point underdog in the Pac 12 championship game to Oregon, in spite of the fact that they had beaten Oregon earlier on in the season. And of course, we know what happened in Vegas in that one a couple of weeks ago. Washington comes into this contest as 4-point underdog against Texas. You can make the case that nobody was playing better at the end of the season than the Texas Longhorns were. And this is one of those tricky areas right here for the committee because you have the Rose and Sugar Bowl this year as the semifinal locations. Historically, Washington winning the Pac 12, they would have been in Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. And it looked like that was going to be the case until Georgia lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. That changed a lot of things. So it's one of those scenarios right here. Whether you put Michigan or Washington at the Sugar Bowl, they would have been at a disadvantage, location and crowd wise, going up against either Alabama or Texas. So clearly, that's something that the Huskies are going to have to deal with in this contest, given the closer proximity rather, to New Orleans from Austin. But make no mistake about it, between the Huskies fans and the Longhorns fans, the Superdome is definitely going to be rocking on Monday night. Texas has not been tested in their last couple of games. We saw them win big in their Big 12 regular season finale, and then of course destroying Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. But you got to give credit to Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian and what he has done, this turnaround that he has done for this Texas program, and he has gotten them back on the national stage. And regardless of whether or not Sarkisian was at Washington, USC, or now Texas, his teams always run the football. And of course, we saw Jonathan Brooks go out with the ACL injury earlier this season, but Texas always has a slew of running backs. It's part of their tradition. And now you got CJ Baxter going up or going behind one of the best offensive lines in the country. This offense is a lot different when Quinn Ewers is out there. We saw what it looked like with Malik Murphy. No disrespect to Malik Murphy when Quinn Ewers was injured, but Quinn Ewers brings a different scenario to what Texas can do. I like Xavier Worthy. He's been a big physical wide receiver throughout his college career, and I think he has another impact to show what he can do on this national stage. Now, for Texas on offense, they want to go after a Washington defense that was ranked 93rd in the nation in yards allowed this season. But it's one of those when you hear that stat, you're like, wow, you know what? Washington gives up a lot of points. They must have lost. Washington defensively, they have a bend but don't break philosophy. So you'll move the ball on them, but they kind of put the clamps on you in the red zone, and they have a knack for forcing turnovers. So it's going to be very interesting to see who wins that chess match. And it's also going to be very important for this Texas offense to score touchdowns when they get into the red zone, as opposed to having to settle for field goal attempts. Now, Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback for Washington. He's been a calm, cool, and collected customer all season long. And it's going to be interesting to see if this Texas defense will be able to dial up the pressure on them. I go back to the Arizona State game, and that Arizona State defense really kept Penix Jr. and this Washington offense off schedule throughout the contest, and the Huskies really had to fight, scrap, and claw to get that win at home in Seattle. But nonetheless, you go back to Washington's last game, the rematch with Oregon, and they switched it up on the Ducks. They ran the football and consistently ran the football, and that was a big difference in that contest with Dylan Johnson. And I think the Washington Huskies are definitely going to try to go out there once again and run the ball. But make no mistake about it, this Washington team is talented. This Washington team is the real deal. You look at the talent that they have at the wide receiver position with Roman Dunze and Jalen Polk. This might be the best wide receiver unit that Texas has faced since the Oklahoma game at the Cotton Bowl earlier this season. You look at it, the Huskies are undefeated and they've specialized in winning the close games. 7 games this season for Washington have been won by 8 points or less. I talked about that bend but don't break philosophy for this Washington team. Can guys like Dominic Hampton and Braylon Trice make those key plays for the Huskies when Texas gets the ball into scoring position? This is going to be a back and forth affair throughout. I think this contest is going to come down to turnovers, but also which team can score touchdowns and not have to settle for field goals. I know that Texas is favored as of right now by 4 points, but to me, honestly, I think this is a classic toss up. This is a classic pick 'em. And I'm going with Washington in this one, in a tight one by the score of 34-33. So, folks, those are my picks for the semifinals of the college football playoff. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365 that you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.